So yeah, as Kathy said, my role's kind of a role of thirds. I'm based in Thomson Reuters corporate, outside of any of the business units, a bit like Pete, and spend a bunch of my time working with the business units, trying to help them make the right decisions around mobile applications and products. What's a good decision, what's a bad decision? And the short answer is there's no real one answer to this, because although as we talked about before, can be very religious, there's just pros and cons each way. And so my goal in the next 30 minutes is really just to talk about some of those pros and cons and give you some objective measures to think about when you're trying to think about that. Do you go app or do you go web? I have a bias as myself, but I'm going to not mention that bias, at least until the end. I'll see if I can get away with that. So firstly, just kind of, we covered some of this in the boot camp yesterday, but just very, very briefly talk about that difference between mobile apps and mobile web. Some techniques that you might use to get to that, because there's many ways you can actually build your app, and then why you might choose one over the other. So that's kind of my goals for today. So when we think about webs versus the apps, really with mobile web, we're talking about using the on-device browser. You've got that ubiquity of browsers everywhere, and if you do it right, in theory, it's going to work everywhere. Of course, every browser's got its own little quirks, and the more you want to push what the browser can do, the more work you're going to have to do to make it work across all of those. Obviously, with an app, it's a self-contained executable. You're probably going to get it from the App Store, maybe not if it's Android. You saw that with the Amazon App Store with the 8-step process earlier. And of course, the apps can get to every nook and cranny of the device compared to the mobile web. But it's actually surprising how much you can do with the mobile web as well. And there's many, many ways you can build apps. So it's not as simple as I'm going to do mobile web, or I'm going to download the tooling from Apple or whoever and build native. There's all these different ways. You can go to companies like Adobe, or you can go to companies like Appcelerator, and they have frameworks that will do cross-platform applications where you get that dream of write the code once and it will deploy everywhere. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Again, there's many ways. We've got experience in a lot of these. They all have their pros and cons. So when you're thinking about that app approach, the next question is, well, which of these ones is the right way for me? And like I said, spend a lot of time talking about which of those is going to work for you. So it's some of those considerations when we think about this. Okay, so the first thing, certainly within Thomson Reuters, the first thing we think about is what's the goal of the app. And every time we've kind of looked at this, I've come to the conclusion there's really only 3 reasons we build apps in Thomson Reuters. It's either to drive market and drive customers to our products. So it's either surreptitious or very in-your-face marketing, where you're giving away some content for free and then you're embedding links in there to try and get back and pay for things. Or maybe it's a product like Westlaw, where you're doing an app to deliver an enhanced experience for the iPad, which that's been very successful for us, and we have a lot of users using Westlaw Next on the iPad. Or the App Store's the channel, but as we'll see, especially for B2B companies like ourselves, App Store is the channel where you're actually selling the app through the App Stores. That turns out to be quite a sort of marginal business for us, because the App Stores are all designed for consumer, and 9 times out of 10, if you're selling to another business, they don't want their patrons, if you're selling to the law librarian, for example, they don't want their patrons buying these apps and then running all these things through expenses. So there's all kinds of considerations with the app stores. There's a few places where it makes sense for us. In the academic market, for example, law students, they're individual consumers and they'll buy things from us in the app store. But the key point about this is the first 2 really are adding costs. So if you're with the Westlaw example, we've got a certain amount of revenue that we're making with Westlaw. If we're going to build an iPad app for Westlaw Next, we now have 2 channels that we're distributing that Westlaw Next content through. So we've added to our costs, and now whenever we want to enhance Westlaw, we've got to build the feature in 2 places. We've got to build it on the web, and we've got to build it on the iPad. out for that product, it makes sense because we know that we get additional usage from having that application. But you have to kind of build the application to know if you're going to get the additional usage. So it's a big plunge that you have to take to then only find out that actually we got that one wrong. And you can make the same argument about something like Facebook on your iPhone, right? I mean, clearly the Facebook app on the iPhone, it's there. I think it was there originally really just to take photos, because you can't take photos from the browser. And everyone wants to take photos and post the photos of the kids on Facebook. It's clearly driving Facebook usage, so that's a good investment of Facebook's time. If the App Store is truly the channel, then that's where you're actually adding to the top line. But as I say, for us, that's actually kind of a small use case. We talked a little bit about this before. The inner box is the things we can do in the mobile web. And really, when we talk about the mobile web, primarily we mean WebKit, the WebKit browsing engine, which underpins iOS, it underpins Android, it underpins the new Symbian devices, it underpins the new BlackBerry devices. So Microsoft's really the only company that's doing something different. But it's not quite as simple as that, because the Android devices have different versions of WebKit than the iOS devices, etc., etc. But the point is, the mobile web, you can actually do quite a lot already. And native gives you those things around the outside. But again, in our business, most of those things around the outside aren't actually particularly relevant to us for most of our apps. Where it becomes interesting is kind of that large offline data. Right now, with the mobile web browsers, it's difficult to do lots of offline data. It's even harder to secure your content in the browser. If you're going to cache a lot of content, you can't really do anything around securing that content in the browser. They'll get there, but they're not there yet. So, you know, another dimension to look at it is say, well, what things am I trying to do with my app? Then there's the customer ownership piece. When you go through the App Store, Apple owns your relationship with the customer. The best you'll get is you put a screen up and you say, hey, give us your email address so we can tell you about the new versions of the app. And some of the people who download that app will give you their email address. Most won't, obviously, right? Because we all hate those spam emails. So when you work with the Apples or you work with one of those other markets, they're owning your customer relationship. And you know, they may pass that information to you. There was the big deal that Apple did with the magazine and newspaper publishers, right, where you could do that opt-in on the subscription stuff. Again, doesn't work particularly well for us, but they may share that. Clearly, you get a whole bunch of marketing, or you can get a whole bunch of marketing. It depends on how successful your app is. And you certainly get that reach of the store. We get sales of our apps in places where we have no sales presence. So if you've got the right app, you're going to have more reach than if you're out there just trying to promote a web application. Of course, with the mobile web, you own that relationship with the customer. The marketing's all on you. If it fails, it's all on you. And it's whatever reach you can achieve with that mobile web product. And of course, then there's business models. The great thing about a mobile web is you can do anything you like. Any business model that the SEC will approve is going to, you know, you can do. In the app stores, there's these very kind of fixed set of models that they're going to allow. And for a lot of us in the B2B space, we're in that grey area, section 11.13 of the App Store guidelines about subscription products and what you can and can't do on those subscription products. Because Apple doesn't want you to be using the App Store as a mechanism for marketing your subscription product. So that's why you get these strange behaviors, like if you look at the Kindle application on iPad, all it has is a username and password. There's no tell me what Kindle is. There's no I can't log in or any of that, because Apple won't let those links appear on that login page. Because Apple's view is if you stumble across the Kindle app and don't know what Kindle is, you're the one person who doesn't know anymore, then they don't want to be leading customers to Amazon. Whereas if you're an Amazon customer already, they want you to have that Amazon experience on their device, because, as Kara was saying before, Apple's fundamentally about shifting hardware. So they'd rather you using Kindle on iPad than on Kindle. So lots of different ways you can think about the business model, but the key point is the app stores are going to restrict you, and sometimes those restrictions can be fairly significant. But it's not all bad. When you look at that bottom line there, cross-border taxation, accounts receivable, all those things, they cost us a lot to do ourselves, right? When you're on the App Store, that's all handled for you and you just get the check every month. And then, of course, the reseller models can change. So last January, we were busy building our ebook platform, and we thought we were on pretty safe ground because Amazon were already doing it, and we thought we knew what we were doing on iPad. And then Apple rejected the Sony ebook app for this whole kind of reason about, well, it's our customer, we don't want you marketing, etc., etc. And so then there was this kind of 5 months of like, oh crap, have we got this huge investment in an ebook platform that's now not going to work on iPad because Apple have changed the rules? And it wasn't until June of last year at WWDC when they came out with the new rule set, and the FT had basically said, we're not going to wait, we're going to go mobile web, right? So the point is, when you sign up for especially with Apple, but when you sign up to these things, you don't get to redline the contracts that Apple send you, right? You have to take it on their terms, and one of the terms is we can change the terms whenever we want. So that's, and basically if you don't approve the next version of the contract, you can't submit any more apps. That's how they work. So we have this farce every time Apple change the rules where I'll send the new version of the contract to the attorney, say, here, look this over, tell us if we're okay. But I've already pressed yes, I accept, because what else can I do? And then you've got the big which platform question. We were talking about this at lunch. You look at this. This is Gartner do these DataQuest press releases. So this is just like raw worldwide figures for OS share. And you look at this and you say, right, we should be building for Android because Android's where everyone's at. Well, not really, because Android's replacing all the feature phones, but it's not where our customers are at least for our market. Android's interesting for us in places like India and LATAM, and we see Android usage there because Apple don't necessarily have a great distribution mechanism there, but in North America, our customers are not using Android. Customers in large organizations, they're not allowed to connect Android in because the CIOs are worried about the security. The Android marketplace, my boss describes it as a cesspool of software. I don't disagree. So although Apple have got, you look at that and you say, well, it's kind of small, but it's where the majority of your customers are. And remember, this is just handsets. This doesn't include iPad, and then we put iPad in here, it skews. So you kind of got to understand where your customer base is when you're making that decision about if I'm going to build an app, which platforms I'm going to build for. Another thing about the apps is if you build a really crappy website, no one has anywhere to complain about it. I mean, you might get a few tweets and stuff, but there's not like this one page. It's not like 15 years ago, right, where Yahoo had a list of all the websites and they could add a comment section, right? If you build a bad app or an app your customers don't like, they all go and comment. And people don't comment when they like the app as much as they do when they don't like the app, right? Your unhappy customers are going to be much more vocal than your happy customers. So the point is, you get that negative comments, and you've got to be investing in it to turn it around. And that's kind of the experience we went through with Westlaw Next over 12 months, converting those negative comments to positive. With mobile web, or with any web-based application, if it doesn't launch well, if the customers aren't using it, you can just kind of shut it down. With the apps, you've got to, if you're going to shut it down, you've got to move people away from it, or you've got to say, no, we've got to be in this. So the point is, a lot of times I'll see business cases in the business units where they're saying, okay, let's build this, build the app, here's the capital that we've got assigned to build that. And you say, well, where's the maintenance? Where's the money you're going to keep spending on updating the app to fix all this kind of stuff? And oftentimes it's not considered. Another way of looking at that is the cost of that to build. So as you can tell, I'm originally from the UK, and there's this great website in the UK called IT Jobs Watch where you can type in technical skills and get the average salaries, and all the contractors use it to figure, and the employees use it to figure out what they should be earning. So Objective-C is the language you program the iOS apps in, and you can see like the way that's just jumped over the last couple of years. And if you look at the highlighted technologies there, they're all the technologies you need to know for the mobile web. And then the ones on the left, they're the technologies you need, you know, things like Android and Objective-C. Costs more to get the people. In the Twin Cities where we are right now, Best Buy is in the middle of basically kicking Accenture out. And so they're doing all this huge recruiting. So we've got like an under 1%, under 1% of technology people are unemployed at any point in the Twin Cities. So you can imagine how much it costs us to try and get Objective-C developers right now in the Twin Cities. It's super expensive. It's about a 20–25% premium we're paying in the cities right now over Java and more of the web languages. So it can cost you more to build. Of course, there's all sorts of little startup companies that will tell you they can build the app for you, you know, and they'll get it done in a couple of weeks. Be very careful with those guys. There's like everyone's building apps, right? Everyone's in that business right now. It's like the web was 15 years ago, right? Everyone could build a website. And time will tell which ones of those guys kind of stick with it and actually have the skills. And then there's that ongoing spend. So you've got to do the ongoing spend for making the app better and getting positive reviews. But another way of thinking about the ongoing spend is this. So this is the Apple website back in mid-90s, and it works perfectly well in a browser today. I can guarantee you the mobile apps we were doing in the mid-90s on the Cyan 3 and the Cyan 5 and the stuff that I had back then, they don't work on anything anymore, right? When you commit to building an app, regardless of how you're building that app, you're committing to some degree of spend to keep it maintained and updated. So the iPad 3 came out this year, a couple of months ago, and it's got the Retina display. So you've got to go back and readdress all your apps to support the Retina display. There's going to be an iPad 7-inch is the rumor later this year. And Apple will do a good job, I'm sure, of just making the apps work, but it will be like when the iPad came out originally. The apps will work, but you'll really want to do some design work to optimize the experience, because otherwise it will be a bit too crushed. With the web, it just kind of tends to work. It's very rare with the web that a new browser comes out and your website starts crashing. You know, there's just a lot more maturity there than we have with the mobile apps right now. So you just need to be budgeting for those costs, and we just don't, at least in my experience, I don't see a lot of that thinking in the business units when I'm working with them, because it's kind of the stuff that no one wants to think about, right? They just want to get the app out and yay, we have an app. And then testing kind of follows the same way. So because the web's kind of old at this stage, there's all these really, really solid testing tools out there for testing web-based products, and the mobile web really is just an extension of the web. So you can leverage all your investments you've already got. There's loads of companies with loads of experience in how to do automated testing and really get solid testing. On the app side, it's kind of the Wild West right now, as you'd expect, because this stuff's all new and the test vendors haven't really brought products to market yet that really solve for this. So, you know, it's a nascent market. Everyone's got their own ideas about the right way to test. The only advice I have is minimize your on-device testing, because that's kind of the most expensive form of testing. It's crazy. You'll see the testing groups, and they're like, right, we all need iPhones, right? So all of a sudden, you've got the testing group. Everyone's got an iPhone. Everyone's got an iPad. You know, it's a great excuse for them to get iPhones and iPads, but it's not cheap. And half of them are on an AT&T contract one way or another, right? So this is maturing, and it changes all the time, compared to the web, where it's just, okay, we all know how to test the web. There's mature examples there. So I kind of have this tongue-in-cheek business case checklist that I run through with the businesses, and we can send it round after if people are interested, or you can tweet me and I'll send it to you. And you go through and you kind of score. It's like a little bit like, you know, you get plus 10 points for this, minus 10 points for this, and then at the end, depending on what your score is, it tells you what you should do. That's the goal of the checklist. It is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but hopefully guides some of that thinking. I'm not successful all the time in persuading the business units to do what I think is the right thing for them, because the app is undeniably sexy. And like we heard yesterday, sometimes the CEO will just say, it needs to be an app. right? And sometimes you just have to do it. But I guess the message I want to leave you with, and I've got time for questions as well, is apps are like puppies, right? So everyone wants the puppy for Christmas, and they're really cute, and you get the puppy for Christmas, and everyone's like, it's the new thing in the house, and everyone's very excited about it. But the problem is the puppies grow up. And all of a sudden you've got this 80-pound monster that, you know, is chewing up the house, and you're feeding it all the time. And the app experience, at least for me so far, has been very like that. Doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. It just means think about the consequences of that decision when you do it. So questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Great presentation. Just a question of what you guys are doing for discoverability, findability on the mobile web.
Yeah. So on the mobile web side, we really, the majority of our mobile web so far has been optimizations of existing web-based products. So really what we're trying to do is, if you come to one of our existing web-based products on a mobile device, we're trying to do that trick of, oh, we think you're on an iPhone, here's a mobile web optimized version, and you should always give customers or your users the chance to say no. But you kind of make that discovery inherent in the product, and then rely on the existing product marketing mechanisms. We do a little bit of, in some cases we've kind of done some specific marketing for that mobile web, but especially in the information business like we are, so much of it really is about, you're paying us, on a subscription to get access to this information, and really we should be able to give that to you on whatever device you have. And you shouldn't even have to really think about, oh, is Thomson Reuters doing mobile web, and are they doing desktop? It should just work regardless of how you're coming to us.
The developer of the Facebook and iPhone app, Joe Hewitt,
yeah,
he was also one of the lead developers for Firefox. He very famously said after he developed the Facebook for iPhone app that he was going to stop developing for iOS because he didn't like Apple's policies, basically.
Right.
He was going to embrace HTML5. And seeing as how you seem to be on the side of the web apps, which is also the side that I lean towards, I'm wondering how you feel about the fact that he reversed course 180 degrees about 2 years after he made those comments and said, you know what, the problem with the web is that nobody drives it. W3C controls the actual standard for HTML. They're a very slow organization.
Yeah.
And the main contributors to WebKit, Google and Apple and Google actually in that order, have really no incentive to make HTML5 as good as their native environments. So what do you think about that?
Yeah. So I'll come back to the point you made first about, I do have a bias towards mobile web because of our business model. It just doesn't fit with the consumer nature of the app stores. But right now, apps, for offline experiences, for example, apps are just there. Now, to the point about Apple and Google, WebKit has had some serious investment over the last couple of years. I agree with you, it's not, if you look at the changes in mobile Safari since iOS 2 or even 1 compared to all the new APIs that they've added to iOS, clearly Apple want you to be going a certain direction. So I agree that it's, the W3, this was exactly the same with HTML4 and exactly the same with HTML3 too back in the day, right? It's always going to be a slower process. Right now they're arguing about vendor prefixes for a lot of the CSS3 stuff. But what's nice about that open community is there's always developers trying to make it work, right? So you have scripts like Modernizer, which will allow you to use the HTML5 elements in IE6. And so there's always people working out these shims, and the openness of it means that there's always someone improving on a shim. And yeah, in an ideal world, we wouldn't be doing any of those shims, right? Because they are messy. But there's at least some solution, and to me, it's getting better over the time. And I think Google know that they can index the web. I don't think Google can index the apps. And so Google do have a huge incentive in making the mobile web work. It's a mystery to me why the Android browser is still so rubbish. But then they've brought out Chrome, which is like, that's typical Google thinking. Well, why didn't you improve the native browser? But anyway, so I don't know that I fully agree with that line of thinking, because to me it's like, where are they getting to? And they are gradually moving along, but it's a slow process for sure. But every year someone comes out with something more amazing in the web. And I think actually, Microsoft, to their credit, they're doing a lot now with Metro and Windows 8 on ARM, which is all HTML5 based. And it's great to see Microsoft actually investing in this, because that will keep Apple and WebKit a little bit more honest. For years, Microsoft didn't support SVG, and it was just like a huge headache. But now they do, and they do it really well. They do it better than WebKit, because it's all GPU accelerated. So there's enough vendors that I feel like it's always going to progress in the right direction. Does that answer your question?
Any other questions? Okay, well, Dan, thank you very much.
Sure.